Good morning. You know, we get to meet a lot of people in our lives who inspire us. And today I'm very fortunate to be able to introduce to you someone who's been an inspiration to me and has also become a very good, dear friend. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because now it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. I'm Steve Glavin, and this is the show where we come together around our virtual coffee table each week and join the conversation to chat about interesting topics with amazing guests. If you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. It is Saturday, September 14th, 2024, if you're tuning in live. We do encourage you to make sure that you are saying hello to us in the chat. And once we get into our topic and meet our guests, that you participate in the chat. I mentioned that we're gathering around our virtual coffee table. This is your coffee table. This is your chat as much as it is mine. Yes, I'm the one who gets to talk out loud into the microphone, but this is all of us. So thank you for being here. By the way, if you are tuning in later on and watching the recording of this episode, you can still put your comments in the chat, be a part of the conversation. So I always want to make sure that happens. Say hello to Shalan, who is here. He's excited for today's interview. So am I. Um, Carla is here. Rick is here. Jerry is here. Michelle is here. Good morning to all of you. And yes, happy Saturday. How is it going wherever you are? We're kind of getting close now where, you get different. There is, I don't remember all the terms, but there are different definitions of autumn. And there is the meteorological definition. There is the actual astronomical definition. Astronomical, we're getting close to when we actually the autumnal equinox, when we actually enter spring officially because of the Earth's rotation. Blah blah blah. But the meteorologists actually classify the months on the basis of just kind of weather changing and that type of thing. So from a meteorological perspective, the start of September is also the start of the autumn season. Autumn starting for the meteorologists because they don't want to be astronomers; they want to be meteorologists. So for them, autumn is September, October, November. So we could technically say that it's fall, it's autumn already, which I think is probably not inaccurate. It's been not heavily, but we've had a little bit of rain here in Spokane off and on the last few days. So it's feeling a little bit more like autumn. The temperatures are getting a bit cooler, and school starts, and all of those things kind of lead us to think of this time as being autumn. We're already starting to see leaves change in some of the trees. So how is it where you're at? What are the seasons doing? What do you expect for the seasons? What does autumn look like where you are at? Do the leaves change, and is that something that's kind of special for you? Joel is here. Hello, Joel. Joel is, I'm glad to see you on here, Joel. Joel is our guest today. So the fact that he's here in the chat means that as we get into the conversation, if you put your questions and comments in the chat, Joel will be able to see them and respond to those. So good to have you here, Joel. Um, see who else is here. A bit autumnal, as it were, Shalyn says. Absolutely. Listen, before we get into our conversation, I want to get to our sweet and savory and share a couple things. For many of us, one of the more iconic voices and performers of the last decades is James Earl Jones. And James Earl Jones, as I'm sure you know by now, just made my nose itches, passed away this last week, September 9th, at the age of 93. And he had a stellar career. Most of us think about, well, I'm curious, first of all, when you think of James Earl Jones, what are the roles that you think of? What comes to mind immediately? Uh, whether it was a voiced role or an actual role where he appeared on stage, there were so many over the decades. By the way, good morning, Shelley. I see you on here as well. And if you're joining us, please do say hello in the chat. There may be some people who are actually joining on YouTube. We know that the chats don't cross over, but if you're joining us on YouTube, you can also comment and say hello in the chat. We're kind of monitoring that as well, and we'll try to make sure that we are relating anything that is said or asked over there so that we can follow you. All right, getting back to James Earl Jones, what are those roles? What do you think of him? He was, yeah, Carissa's mentioning that he was on Sesame Street in its second episode. There are so many fun places you can go on YouTube, and you just do a search for James Earl Jones appearances on shows or whatever. You can find him on so many shows. Of course, Darth Vader, the voice of Darth Vader, he was not in the costume, but he was the voice of Darth Vader, the voice of Mufasa in the original Lion King cartoon movie, the voice of CNN. I think to this day, if you tune in like online to CNN, you hear James Earl Jones saying, "This is CNN," um, in that voice, which for some reason I just tried to imitate. I don't know why, because nobody can imitate James Earl Jones's voice. Just such a classic sound. But he had so many roles that were on screen as well. And of course, one of the more iconic of those that people remember and quote very often is Field of Dreams, where he played the role of Terrence Mann, an author who was admired by the main characters, protagonists, and ends up being a very integral part of the story, and has that monologue toward the end of the movie about people will come. So that's a key one. I'll tell you one that a lot of people don't know about, and it's one of my favorite James Earl Jones roles. and it's an amazing movie. If you have not seen this, you need to find it. I think it's available on Amazon Prime or Netflix. You can find it someplace. Do an IMDb search and it'll tell you where to find this movie. But the movie is called A Family Thing. It's with Robert Duvall, which in and of itself, you think about that combination, two iconic actors. But I'm not going to give away any details about the movie or the story. I don't want it to spoil it. If you have seen it, you know why I don't want to give away details and why I think it's such an amazing and iconic movie. If you have not seen it, you need to. You need to. And I think two Oscar-worthy performances by two of the greatest actors of our generation. Um, and there is a monologue that Robert Duvall has relatively early in the movie that is one of the most powerful monologues I've ever heard in a movie of any kind. So anybody know, James Earl Jones' career started on stage, and that happened, and he started back in the 50s. His first Broadway role was in the mid to late 50s. But does anybody know what his first movie role was, his first feature film role? If you do, you can put it in the chat here. Let's see if you're correct. If you want to make a guess on that, and then I'll give you a reveal here in a minute or so. In the meantime, everybody drink. I'm waiting because not because I want you to look it up on Google, but because I know there's a slight delay when this goes out. So I want to give people a chance to respond to this. And some of you may be Googling it. I don't know. I prefer that you just guess. Um, Everybody drink. Thank you, Shalane. I appreciate your assistance here. Okay, anybody have a guess you want to make? I'm not seeing anything yet in the chat. I don't think. Where am I? Did anybody? Let's see. Carissa, which one were you responding to? You did not that you did not know. I forgot he was in it. Is that the guess? Did you look it up? Is that what you're indicating here? That you looked it up and now Shalane says she does. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it was. It was yeah. Okay, looked it up on Google. 1964, and it was Stanley Kubrick's Doctor Strangelove, and James Earl Jones was the bombardier on board the B-52 that's flying that we follow through much of the movie. Um, yeah. So if you weren't aware of that, it's worthwhile to go back and watch it. If you've never seen Doctor Strangelove, again, an iconic movie, Stanley Kubrick, typical Kubrick. It's typical Kubrick in a number of ways in that it's got a lot of very esoteric elements to it, but it's comedy mixed in with the idea of sort of a what did we call those, disaster kind of end of the world types of movies. And but there are some classic serious actors in this movie that play roles that are subtly hilarious. George C. Scott is in it. Any number of actors. You can look it up again and just see the list. Dark apocalyptic comedy. I would say that's a good one. All right. Listen, I had one birthday on my list this week, and that is Sean McCormick. Sean is celebrating a birthday today. And so happy birthday to Sean as you're celebrating today. And if you have a special day this week that I didn't have on my list, you can share it in the chat. If you have one coming up, you may have just celebrated one. In fact, I know that our guest Joel, I believe, just celebrated a wedding anniversary this last week. Is that right, Joel? If so, please, you can please let us know that. I think he posted it on Facebook, so I don't think I'm outing him on any like personal information there. But if you have a special day and you want to share it with us in the chat, please do. If you have one coming up, perhaps in the next few weeks, in either the meteorological or astronomical autumn months, and want to let us know about that so that we can put it on the list and make sure we celebrate with you, you can email to cbwsteve@comcast.net. You see it there on the screen, and we will make sure we get that on the list. Joel says number 26. That's what I thought. Congratulations on that to you and your lovely wife. All right, listen, we're going to get into this now. I want to just share a little bit about our guest before we play the conversation that he and I had. Joel A. Herman is a defense contractor in support of the Joint Staff J7 Joint Knowledge Online Division, Suffolk, Virginia. Prior to serving as a defense contractor, Joel served as a sergeant first class in the United States Army. He served in numerous Army units throughout his 22-year career, to include combat deployments to Iraq with the 3rd Infantry Division and in Afghanistan with the 191 Cavalry 173rd Airborne Brigade in 2007 and 2008. His last assignment prior to his retirement from active duty was serving as an observer trainer for the Joint Staff J7 Deployable Training Division. Originally from Pocahontas, Iowa, Joel enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1994 as an infantryman and served on active duty until his retirement in 2016. Joel currently resides in Newport News, Virginia, with his wife of 26 years, as we just celebrated, Jennifer, and their 4-year-old German Shepherd, Roxy. They have one son, Charles, age 25, who works in the architecture industry in South Florida. Joel is an avid endurance runner. Joel is an avid endurance runner, loves to participate in CrossFit, plays softball, and studies American history. Can you tell now? I said at the very beginning that there's some people who just inspire me. Do you understand now why? Here is my conversation with Joel Herman. Joel Herman, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Steve. It's an honor to be on your show, and I look forward to this conversation.
Good. We talk about the activities that people are involved in, and running is obviously a major part of your life. And I'm just curious how you got started running. Was this always something from childhood, from teenage years? Was it something that you started really doing at a later point in life?
Well, I did start running at a very young age. Probably third or fourth grade. I ran my first mile in elementary school at the end of the school year every year, where I grew up in a small town in Pocahontas, Iowa. They would put on a track and field event for the elementary school kids, and for some reason, I always signed up for the mile, and I'd always win it, or I would come in, in the top 3 places or whatever. So I did get my start running very early on. Moved into junior high and was still running that mile, and then I get into high school as a freshman, and I become the 1 mile and 2 mile runner for the track team from the time I was a freshman to the time I was a senior. I was also running cross country, which in high school is 3.1 miles. So I did fairly well. I broken the 5-minute barrier in the mile run as a sophomore in high school, and I was a conference champion as a 2 mile runner, and I ran a couple times in the 10 minutes. 10:18 I think is my best time, and I was actually a state qualifier in the 2 mile run as a senior in high school. Um, so I do have that background, and along with running, I also was a 5-sport athlete for my high school. I was playing football on Friday nights. I was running cross country on Saturdays. When wrestling season came around, I was wrestling. When baseball season came around, I was playing baseball. I ran track. So I was an athlete all year round.
All year round.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting how I really got into this long distance running beyond 3 miles. I'd done a couple Army 10 milers while I was in the Army. Of course, the Army loves to run, and well, it did for the 2 decades that I was in there. I don't know if they run as much as they used to, but I remember running all the time.
With full kit, very often with full kit, right?
Not
always,
often, but not always. But during PT, you're always running. It could be a 3-mile run. It could be the PT test at the time was a 2-mile run. Sometimes we do like company runs, battalion runs, brigade runs, maybe a division run, and those could be like 4 or 5 mile runs. So I always did that. I've always been good at running, and it wasn't until I retired that I really got into long distance running, and I'm talking like half marathons and beyond. And that really started in 2017. I'd been retired from the Army for a year, and I was ready to just settle in as a angry, disgruntled retired veteran, and that's really not me. But that's what I was prepared for, with a lot of health problems, knee problems, ankle problems, And so a friend of mine, Xavier Calderon, that I used to work out with quite a bit, said, "Hey, Joel, you want to run a marathon?" And I scoffed at the idea. I'm like, "You got to be kidding me. I can't run no marathon." He's like, "Yeah, come on." This is like April of 2017. And he's like, "Yeah, come on. The marathon's in November. It's in Richmond. You'd be great at this." And reluctantly, I agreed to it and trained all the way up into that, trained religiously, followed his training plan. And I ended up, they say, the standard is if you run a less than a 4 hour marathon, you're doing pretty good. So my first marathon I ran, it was like a 3:58 or something like that. So I
Nice.
really trained hard. My first marathon, I broke 4 hours. And as soon as that race was over and I got back home, I immediately signed up for another one. And that's kind of where I got into endurance running and long distance running on the trails. Just, hey, we're doing a 10-hour endurance run. Go see how far you can run. See how many laps you can do on a 3.1 mile course or whatever. So,
Wow.
a smaller group, and it's more relaxing. You're not waiting for hours to start. You're not battling traffic to get somewhere. You're not running on the road with traffic. You don't have to worry about someone hitting you. You're on a trail, so it was kind
Hmm.
of nice, and that's kind of what I like to do now. So
Mm.
even though every once in a while I'll still get on the road and I'll do a marathon, or I'll do a half marathon. And I think I'm going to do one in October. I'm going to do one in Hampton, Virginia, just with a friend of mine. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to do a half marathon." I'm like, "Oh, cool, I'll do it with you." So, so
Excellent.
yeah, so.
You mentioned kind of several different types of runs: half marathons, endurance
Mhm.
runs. Do you kind of classify yourself in any particular way beyond just saying I'm a long distance runner? I mean, if ultra marathoner or anything like that, how do you refer to yourself?
I refer to myself as just a runner, and I tease people. I say, "Yeah, I'm a chubby guy that runs really well." So I'm not a competitive runner. I will never win a race, although I'll do fairly well in my age group. And one marathon that I did, I actually came in second place in my
Oh,
age group. The
okay.
fastest marathon I did was the second marathon I signed up for after the Richmond one was the Fort Bragg All American, and I ran that one in 3 hours and 41 minutes, and I came in second place in my age group. But that's not my goal. I'm not a competitive runner. I know I'll never win a race. I'm just competing with myself.
Uh-huh.
That's how I look at it. I don't worry about what other people are doing anymore. There was a time in my life where I was a competitive runner, maybe in high school. And, when I first got started, I wanted to see how fast I could do a marathon or a half marathon. But that's kind of all gone out the window. And now I just compete with myself. And one thing you'll notice when I post a run, I will always tell you the event I'm doing. I always tell you the goal I have in mind for myself. And then I will always tell you whether I achieved that goal, whether I fell short of that goal, or I exceeded that goal. So
Mhm.
you'll always know how I did on that run. And, a lot of times I achieve the goal. Once in a while, I'll exceed my goal. And, sometimes I'll fall short of my goal, and that's okay. I'll just, sign up for the next one and challenge myself again and
Yeah.
compete with myself. So, yeah.
Why is running important to you at this stage in your life? Post army service, this
Yeah.
age and stage in your life, the running itself and the competing with yourself. Why are those important to you?
Well, I think number one, um, it helps keep me in shape. So as I get older and I want to continue to, to do things well into my 70s, maybe my 80s. I've got one son, he's 25. I'd like to do things with him. And I want to do things with him for many, many years to come. So there's the physical aspect of that. Mentally, it's a way for me to get out there, and I've worked out a lot of problems just going on a run for myself, just working things out in my mind, talking through things. Or something might have been stressed me out at some point. And when I get done with a run, my mind is clear, and I feel better about it. So, and then, socially, I've met so many good people in the running community. The running community is fabulous. It's nothing but encouragement. Yeah. So running has just been, like I said, since I was challenged in 2017, and that was at a point where 2017, my son was getting ready to graduate high school. He was getting ready to move on to college. I was like, well, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to have my son in the house no more. So this kind of helped me out in that regard as well, to give me something to do, because my son's not going to be around no more. So
Yeah.
what am I going to do? So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that helps.
I want to talk for a few minutes about your
Mm-hmm.
military service. You
Mm-hmm.
referenced your time in the Army, and just be
Mm-hmm.
interested to find out more about your time in the military. What prompted you to enlist in the Army, the timing for that, the motivators behind that, and then some of the stories that maybe you'd want to share about your time in service.
Okay. Well, you're going to enjoy this story about how I enlisted, right? So I graduated high school in 1993, and decided, yeah, I want to, you know, go live on my own now. So instead of finding a college close to home, there was plenty of colleges around my hometown within an hour distance away driving. I could have lived at home. I could have worked at home, but no, I graduated high school, decided I wanted to go to college 200 miles away, 4 hours away on my own, and I kind of like, man, I tell my 18-year-old self, what were you thinking? But at the same time, things wouldn't have ended up the way they did. But so I go to college I grew up in the northwest part of Iowa, and I went to college all the way in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is in the eastern part of Iowa, right? So I'm like 4 hours away, 200 miles away from home. And I didn't have much money. I didn't do well enough in college or in high school academically to get a scholarship. So I enrolled at this community college in Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I was going to college. I had a full load of classes. I was working um, full time at a convenience store, the graveyard shift right down the road, and I just I couldn't sustain that. I couldn't pay my bills. I was a lot of times I was alone in the store during that graveyard shift, and that's how I got my food. I would steal bread or spaghetti and stuff like that just to survive, because I knew I didn't have any money for groceries, right? So I had to do that. And then by the end of that semester, I had dropped all my classes except for three. I finished a psychology class that I got a D in, and I did well in my weightlifting class and my theory of coaching baseball class. And those are the only three classes that I kept. So I'm like, you know what, I can't do this. So I immediately went to, this is probably early December. I went to the Army recruiter. I was the Army recruiter's dream. I walk in there. I'm like, I'm Joel Herman. I'm ready to join the Army. When can I leave? So,
Wow.
yep. So they hooked me right up. And, by the middle of January, I was, heading down to Fort Benning, Georgia to start Army basic training. And I stayed there for the next 22 years. So,
Wow.
and so that's how I got my start in the military, and how I enlisted. And I initially, was just going to sign up and, do 4 years and get some college money and go back to college. But, I kind of liked being in the Army. I was getting a steady paycheck every month, as I was they put me up in the barracks. They were feeding me. I'm like,
Right.
okay, I've got all this money. I can buy my own vehicle. I can do these things, So I'm not going to like it. So I stayed. And then as far as a lot of good memories that I've got, starting early on, I tell you what, I, served three tours. I was stationed in Germany three times. I was um, been all over the world, really. Stationed in Germany three times. I was in the Middle East quite a bit, Kuwait a couple times, Iraq. Afghanistan. So, when I was in Iraq, I was in Western Iraq and Ramadi area. So I've crossed the Euphrates River. I lived
Yeah.
in the Hindu Kush mountain range of northeast Afghanistan. I was in Bosnia early on in my career, crossed the Sava River. I stood on the spot where the Archduke of Austria, Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated. So I stood on that spot in Sarajevo. I've been to Skopje, Macedonia, and visited where Mother Teresa was born and her childhood home there. Been to the DMZ between North and South Korea. I've been to Japan, and then most importantly, in 1996, while I was deployed to Bosnia, I met my wife in a beer tent in Tezar, Hungary.
Okay.
So that was interesting. She was an Army MP. I was a Army infantryman, and I was just starting my deployment to Bosnia, or I was just finishing my deployment to Bosnia. She was starting hers, and we just both happened to be in the beer tent at the same time. And I just sat down and started talking to her and struck up a conversation. And we sat there for 2 hours just talking, swapped addresses, kept in touch. For her deployment, I would send her stuff, and when she came back, we got together, started dating, and 2 years later, we were married. 1 year after that, we had our child. So, and in 4 days, we'll be married 26 years.
Congratulations
So,
on
thank
that
you.
too, and celebrating that.
Yeah.
Talk just a little bit about the camaraderies that develop when you are serving, and particularly you really didn't delve into this, but some of the areas you served in were active combat zones.
Right.
And just in general, how does service in the military lend itself to developing those close relationships, and particularly when you are serving in combat with others?
Yeah. So that's those types of deployments, especially those ones in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I don't want to discount the other peacekeeping ones, but those ones that you serve in, when you're being attacked and almost daily, and it's just you and the guy next to you, and your unit, and how you guys can survive that day, um, without losing one another, being wounded yourself, or losing members of your unit, which we did, right? And those type of things, they just bond you forever. It's really kind of hard to explain, but you have no um, tighter relationships after going through something like that uh, than with those people that you actually served in those areas with. So my closest friends are those guys that I served in Afghanistan with. Those remain my closest friends today, more so than any other unit that I served in. Just because of that was the most that was the toughest deployment that I've ever been on. Honestly, it was, and the people that I've associated with Colonel Coinda's squadron, 191 Cav, are those people that I am, uh, I am tightest with. I am more, I'm close to those people, right? More so than anybody else, more so than anybody that I might have grown up with and known all my life. And I may have just served with these guys for 2 years, but we're forever bonded by what happened to us in Afghanistan. So I kind of hope that
Hmm.
brings home the point that you're after. But yeah, and maybe I didn't explain it well enough, but
No,
I hope I did.
you
So
did. You
okay.
definitely did. What was it like, Joel, finishing that career in the military, returning to civilian life? What were the upsides and the challenges to coming out of the Army and returning to life as a civilian?
Well, the upsides were, I guess, I was home every day. I never had to go out and train again. So I kind of enjoyed that aspect. At the same time, on the flip side, that's all I've known my entire adult life is Army life. So there is an adjustment period there, and a lot of things you miss. You miss those simple formations in the morning. You miss interacting with soldiers in the morning. So that's kind of the downside. And when I decided to retire, I was still physically, I could have still physically continued to serve, but I decided, this is the right time for me to get out. I'm already in the location where I'm going to retire at, so um, I don't know where they're going to want to send me next, and I don't want to have to make another move and then move back here again. So this only makes sense for me to retire now. And it just so happened that I got offered a job as a contractor where I was working at, so I would basically take off the uniform and then just become a contractor working for the Department of Defense. So I thought, this is the best opportunity for me to do this. I'm going to miss the Army, and I did, and I missed it in a big way for the first few years. Now I finally, come to peace with it. Although I sometimes I'm like, did I make the right decision? But yeah, I think I did. So.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it really helped me out where I retired because I got a job as a contractor, and I'm still very much connected with the military, so that helps. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people they'll get out and they're civilian. They're never dealing with the military again. For me, I'm still surrounded by military people, so that really helped me out. And now I'm okay with you know, and I'm heading this way in the next few years. Getting out of this industry. I've spent 30 years, working for the Department of Defense, either as a soldier or now as a contractor for the last 8.5 years. So over 30 years, I've been in this industry, and now I'm kind of leaning towards, okay, well maybe being that friendly veteran at Ace Hardware that mixes your paint for you is It's more something I want to do. It's a less stressful environment. And so I'm kind of heading that way in the next few years. And,
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but I'm heading down that road. So more to follow on that.
Yes. You mentioned a few minutes ago, talked about serving with Chris Kalenda, Colonel Kalenda's unit
Mhm,
in
mhm.
Afghanistan. And in the last couple of years, you've gotten involved with his organization, the Saber Six Foundation,
Mhm.
and just wondered if you want to share a little bit about that organization, about what drew you to want to participate actively in that and what it has meant to you.
Well, what drew me to it was when Chris went on that bicycle ride all across the country, visiting the grave sites of each of the fallen heroes that we lost in Afghanistan. So when I found out Chris was going through Iowa, and I grew up in Iowa, I'm like, I can't let him roll through my state without being there to help support him.
Yeah.
So I did that. I think it was like 4 or 5 days I spent with Chris. Escorting him all the way across Iowa. And that was like one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. And so from that point on, I was pretty well hooked on the Saber Six Foundation, and and the Saber Six Foundation is so important because it brings all of us together that served in Afghanistan during that deployment. And it's just a place where, like, we have these reunions every year. It promotes the purpose, belonging, and well-being that Chris talks about all the time. And I think that's really great that what the Saber Six Foundation does. And I love being a part of it. I love going to those reunions. And I'm just sad that maybe I'll miss it this year just because of some events that I got going on at the same time. But really great program, and you know I'm in it for the long haul, so it's great.
What are you mentioned other events and stuff? I know some of them are personal, but you also have some events that you get involved in and that you're looking ahead in the coming weeks and months that give you the opportunity also to continue to make a difference even through some of your running activities and others. What
Mhm.
kind of projects and events do you have coming up in the future?
Well, this is the first time that I'm publicly going to be talking about this, but in February, starting February 23rd, I believe, my running partner, my longtime running partner, Keith Foster, and I are going to take on a 200-mile run. It's called the Swami Shuffle. It starts in Virginia Beach. You run to the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse and back, and you have 6 days to do it. So we need to average like 34 miles a day. And it's named after a Marine Corps veteran, Dustin Swami Lang, who became one of the 22 veterans a day kill himself. So on February 28th, 2020, Dustin Swami Lang became one of the 22. And so one of the race directors served with him and started this race in his honor. It honors Dustin Swami Lang, and it also brings awareness to veteran suicides. And along with that, these race directors, they created this foundation called Awareness in Action, and it's a small nonprofit dedicated to ending veteran suicide. So that's their mission, and the proceeds that they earn from this race, they will, give half of that to another veteran organization called Mission 22, and that supports veterans, families, and community, and the surrounding community. So it helps the veterans with their PTSD. It promotes wellness for families, and it also promotes awareness that, hey, there's 22 veterans a day that are killing themselves. So great organizations. I'm looking forward to this run in April, and I think after this 200-meter run, I'm probably going to dial back long distance running throughout the year. I'll probably do one starting next year after starting after the 200-mile run. I will do like one in the spring and one in the fall. And the one that I'm going to do in the spring is a 24-hour run. It's the Virginia Run for Cancer. And that is one that I will always do as well, because I had a sister that battled cancer for 7 years, and she passed away 2 days after Christmas in 2020, just a few weeks short of her 48th birthday. So she fought cancer from age 41 to 48. So I've created a team for that called Miles of Smiles for Julie. And so every year I'll have a team out there, and we'll just run miles and raise money and funds for cancer research and stuff like that. So that will always be my springtime run. And then, I'll just dial back all the long running over the summer, because it does wear on you. And maybe I'll just keep it to half marathons and below, 13.1 and below throughout the summer. And then I'll find a long race to do in the fall, whether it's a 50K, a 50 miler, or maybe another 24-hour run, just to see how many miles I can get out of it. So that's kind of what I'm looking at future wise, the 200-mile run, and then the 24-hour run a couple months after that. So that's what I've got.
Well, Joel Herman, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Coffee Breaks with Steve to share your story. Thank you for your service, and thank you for all that you continue to do to make a difference in your world and the world around you. It's all worthwhile.
Well, thank you, Steve. It's been an honor being on your show, and I really am glad that I've gotten to know you over the last year, and I'm so happy that you're a member of the Saber 6 Foundation as well. Everybody enjoys seeing you whenever you show up to these events. You're a great guy yourself, and I look forward to our next meeting in person. That's going to be great.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, my conversation with Joel Herman. Joel, thanks once again for taking that time. Thank you for taking the time to be here today and to add your own comments and answer questions here, Joel. You can understand now why I said that he's one of the people who inspires me. I was chuckling to myself a little bit at the end there when he was talking about some of his future plans, and he said he's going to cut down on the long runs and probably just do some 13.1, half marathon distances, because I'm thinking about that in my prime when I was running on a regular basis. And I was never really a competitive runner either. I mean, if anybody who knows me and has seen my stature knows that I'm not built to run. But I did enter some 5Ks and 10Ks during a period of time, number of years back, few years back. Hasn't been that long ago. Feels like a long time ago. But there were a couple of times just in my training that I ran half marathon distances, and those were long runs. Those were long enough runs. I never did enter a marathon, but yeah, Shalane mentioned, yeah, just and Joel says he'll go back and elaborate on any questions he didn't get a chance to answer. You did a great job with that, Joel. Yes, this is to me. It's always a lot of fun to have the conversations with people like Joel, who's there's a lot about Joel's story that I cannot relate to the specifics, and that I was never big in athletics. I did not serve in the military, um, and and the kinds of things that Joel has done, I can only imagine to a degree some of the things that he's done, some of the things he's been through. But what inspires us when we hear people's stories, one of the things that truly inspires us and motivates us is that we can take other people's stories and we can still find parallels for elements of our own life. And sometimes it's just hearing somebody like Joel talk about how he challenges himself, how he competes against himself, the things that motivate him and have motivated him. And even when he talks about the fact that making decisions about college and making decisions about going into the military and what prompted that. And then I do love to hear the love story, he and his wife. And again, congratulations for their wedding anniversary that they just celebrated this last week. But yeah, I just want to once again just appreciate that fact. By the way, if I'm running something that's chasing me, yeah, Joel mentioned, and we've talked about this on here before, that I do participate with Saber Six, the Saber Six Foundation. Colonel Kalenda has been on this show a couple of times. I have had the opportunity to participate, to be present for a few of Saber Six's events. In fact, if you recall last year, and we've talked about this a couple times in terms of extreme activities or bucket list items, that I did my first and so far only tandem skydive last November when I was with Saber Six, and it was part of their events. Joel was one of the people who was present for that, who encouraged me to go ahead with that tandem skydive, and actually took my camera, my phone, and videoed my skydive from the ground so that I would have that record of it. So thanks for that as well, Joel. But we have become good friends, and I have a tremendous appreciation for Joel. All right, listen, I want to, before we finish up today, as we're finishing up in these last couple of minutes, I want to share some things that are coming up on Coffee Breaks with Steve in the next few weeks. We've got a full schedule, and we've got more that we're working on and getting scheduled to record and getting ready to present. But next week, September 21, Cindy Kosmala is a Michelin-trained pastry chef, pastry baker from Burford, England. And she owns and operates a bakery, a patisserie in the town of Burford, and has extensively trained with people, um, some of the key chefs and bakers throughout the world in her training. And her story is also amazing and will inspire you. And she's just fun to talk to. So you'll want to tune in next week to hear the conversation with Cindy. In a couple of weeks, on September 28th, we're going to have cast members from a brand new play, a brand new musical that's being presented in the Portland area in a few weeks, called Fiona in the Middle. It was written by Jenny Conley and her dad, Jeff Windsor. Jenny has also been a guest on this show in the past. She was on here last spring when this show was starting to come together and we were preparing to audition for it. I also have the opportunity to be involved with this show, and we're going to have members of the cast on here to talk about the show itself and talk about their own participation, what has prompted them, what is special about this show, and why they think if you are anywhere near the Portland area in the first weekend in October, you should come and see this show. And then on October 5th, Kenny Snyder, an amazing musician. He refers to himself, I think, as a psalmist, songwriter, and singer. And Kenny is going to be on the show to talk about music, to talk about musicianship, and his own journey from a very young age to make music a part of his life, how it has affected his faith, how it has affected his life in general, and really talking about this God-given talent that he has for music, and the difference that it has made for him, for his family, and for others in his life. And then on September 21, I think is that the right date? Do I have that on there correctly? Just doesn't seem right. I guess that is, no, it's not. I guess that's right. That doesn't seem right. We have these in the wrong order. Okay, that's why it threw me. We'll get these turned around. So so and that's not right. That's not the right date. It actually should be October 12th. So ignore the fact that it says September 21. October 12th, we will have Virginia Blasio on here. Virginia is a professional poet. She is published. She is a speaker, and she does a lot to work with and inspire the Latin community in California and elsewhere. And Virginia is going to be on here to share some of her poetry and to talk about that. October 12th, not September 21. And then on October 19, Walter Pratty and Pamela Jacobson, a married couple, ignore the fact they have two different last names. People do that for professional reasons. But Walter and Pamela are going to be on here to talk about a nonprofit organization that they founded several years ago and it's continuing to grow. It's continuing to make an impact throughout the world or in different places in the world. Called Girls Soccer Worldwide. Walter has a background as a soccer player and coach, and they continue to coach. He continues to coach, particularly girls soccer, locally, regionally in his area. But Walter and Pamela founded this organization to empower and to train members of their soccer teams for outreach. And then they go to areas in Latin America, specifically to villages, smaller villages that do not have a lot of resources, and particularly where the cultures view girls and women as second-class citizens. And they work to provide coaching for the girls in soccer and what they call football in those villages. And they work to try to change the outlook within the culture that women are not second-class citizens. And they also take time to build facilities for these girls that are entering into womanhood to have some privacy, to have some dignity in their lives. We're going to talk to them about that very special organization and about the work that they do. And then October 26th, Stacy and Kyle Vandola Evans are going to be on here. They work professionally to organize and to oversee professional competitions, jousting competitions. You can go a lot of places and see exhibition jousting, but what the Vandola Evanses do in the UK and around various places in Europe is to bring actual competition, jousting competition, as it was done in medieval times, to the current setting. And it's pretty amazing to see, and it's going to be amazing to hear their story, how they got started with this and how it operates. All right, listen, Sid, we've got a lot going on, but what are the topics you would like to discuss? You're part of our coffee table. You're part of our virtual gathering when we get together. What are some topics that come to your mind that we should be thinking about coming together around on Coffee Breaks with Steve? Who are the guests you would like us to bring on here? We have more than what I just shared who are lining up, and we're getting ready to have those conversations. Some brand new, some returning guests, but we're looking forward to that. But we want to hear from you. You are part of our coffee table. And I'd like to know what you are thinking would be great to do here on Coffee Breaks with Steve. So you can email us at cbwsteve@comcast.net, and you can share your ideas. And if you know somebody you think would be a great guest and they're part of your circle, you can make that introduction too, so that we can start those conversations. Listen, if you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, most of you are here today on Facebook, and that's the best place to live chat. But we also have a YouTube channel where all of our episodes of Coffee Breaks with Steve are also being broadcast and saved. And that is the best place to reach a much broader audience. There's a lot of people who aren't on Facebook, but a lot of people go to YouTube. And whether you don't have to have a membership on YouTube to watch YouTube videos. If you are not already a subscriber, I would strongly encourage you and invite you to go to our Coffee Breaks with Steve YouTube channel and click on the subscribe button, click on the bell so that you get notified when our new videos go up there, and go and look at some of those past videos. The other thing I would ask you to do, and strongly, strongly encourage you to do, is share our YouTube channel with other people in your family circle, your friends, your network, professional network, and let them know that we exist. Let them know about these amazing topics and guests who are part of Coffee Breaks with Steve every week. You get to be here and enjoy it, and we will always have this inner circle, this intimate inner circle. But just think about how many other people could be inspired by people like Joel Herman and to hear his story. So we do want to make sure the word gets out. We want to build that subscriber list there because that creates more visibility. It gets this out in front of more people. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that as well, and hope that you will. We're seeing it grow very slowly, but we would really like to see it expand to the point where we're really moving to the top of people's list when they're doing any kind of a search on YouTube. All right, I think I have gone long enough and we've gone a few minutes over, so I thank you for sticking with us. Want to say one more time thank you to Joel Herman for taking the time to be here to share such a wonderful, inspiring story. I want to thank all of you for being here as well and taking the time to be part of the conversation, to gather with us around our virtual coffee table today and every time that you're here. And I just want to remind you, when you hear stories like Joel's and you think about him, sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating. As I mentioned before, I'm not an athlete. I did not serve in the military, and yet I can take inspiration from Joel's story, and I can think about how I can apply some of the things in my own life, and choose to do things in my community, in the broader area. What can I do? And that's the message I have for all of you. As I always do, I just want to remind you that you have hands, you have feet, you have a voice, you have ways that you can reach out. So please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Coffee Breaks with Steve.